world where you can go from being a struggling, unemployed author with a bad case of writer's block to finishing your book in 4 days and still having the time and energy left over at the end to learn to play the piano, learn a new language, and make it big on the stock market. This is the world in which Eddie Maurer finds himself in the 2011 film Limitless, the action thriller that introduces us to the ultimate possibilities of cognitive enhancement. But of course, things are always dramatized a bit for film, so let's take an example a little bit more realistic. Let's look at Bill. Bill works a typical 9-to-5 job. He's a hard worker and does well, but he is plagued by issues that I'm sure most of you can at least slightly relate to. Bill never really feels ready to start his day until he's had his morning coffee, and throughout the day he finds himself falling into periods where he's jaded, distracted, and definitely not working at full potential. To remedy this, Bill will have another cup of coffee or maybe a sugary snack, which works fine. But soon enough, the caffeine and sugar will wear off, and Bill will be back to operating well below fully productive levels. This is a common scenario for most of today's workers, and I'm sure a lot of you would have had days that pan out in a similar way. But what if there was a way that we could take people in Bill's situation and put them into the situation in which Eddie Maurer finds himself in Limitless? Today, I will discuss a recently developed neuroscience technique that has evolved out of treatments for well-known neurological disorders. However, this technique moves the focus away from treatment and cure and into improvement and enhancement, which can have exciting possibilities for individuals and industry alike. The field of neuroscience is constantly evolving and changing. More and more neuroscientists are focusing less on fixing problems in the brain and making people normal, and more on improving the way we use our brains and making people extraordinary. The human brain is arguably the most complex and powerful machine on the face of the planet, and by no means do we completely understand its full potential. However, we do know that we can improve the way we use our brains. And a key focus in neuroscience is making cognitive enhancement a reality for everyone, which could be a fundamental step in improving New Zealand's economy and society. A key issue facing New Zealand's economy today is our apparent inefficient use of our labour resources. Over the past 30 years, New Zealand has consistently been in the top 20 to 30 countries in the OECD in terms of labour productivity ratings. But not once have we come close to the top 10. And the gap between GDP per hour worked between Australia and New Zealand is a worrying trend. Theirs being 49.1 and ours being way down there at 34.1. The effects of low productivity have shown to be directly linked to GDP. Therefore, the lower the productivity, the less likely that economic growth and wealth are for New Zealand as a country. Of course, the effects of low productivity are not simply on a macroeconomic scale. The current way of fixing low productivity is to simply work longer and longer hours. Increasingly, employees in a range of industries are finding themselves working upwards of 10, 12, or even sometimes 15-hour days simply to get everything done. However, working longer does not necessarily mean working smarter or more productively. In fact, it often has the opposite effect. Let me call your attention back to Bill. The longer Bill works, the more fuzzy periods he falls into, therefore the more coffee he drinks, and the more caffeine crashes he has. This only serves to draw him further into the cycle of peaks and troughs and make him overall less productive. Of course, in some industries, working long hours is simply in the nature of the job. And employees in industries such as trucking and hospitality constantly find themselves working upwards of 12-hour days on a regular basis simply as part of their jobs. Therefore, in these industries, it becomes even more important to keep these employees operating at a high level of concentration and productivity, which is no mean feat. Another area in which we rely on our employees to constantly be performing at their peak are industries in which people's lives could be at stake. Surgeons, pilots, and air traffic controllers are all occupations where a lapse in concentration could have serious or even fatal consequences. Currently, we rely on external technology, such as autopilot or computer-assisted surgery, to aid and augment the performance of these employees and allow them to keep performing at their peak. But a much better solution would be simply to go to the machine we all have inside of us, our brains, and improve that so that we did not have to rely so heavily on external technology. Even for those of you that have normally unstressful working lives, I'm sure that you've all had to face one of those weeks where it seemed impossible to get everything done, or a high-pressure deadline that seemed impossible to meet. Even you could benefit from cognitive enhancement, giving you that short-term boost that you needed to face that week or that deadline and still have time to sit down at the end of it and relax. Wouldn't it be great if there was a way to improve all of these areas so that we could have these benefits? Without trying to sound like a cheesy infomercial, I'm here to tell you there is a way. The latest development in the pursuit of cognitive enhancement is a procedure called transcranial direct current stimulation, or TDCS. This involves mild electrical stimulation of the neuronal pathways in the brain. The setup involves placing 2 electrodes on a person's head, one above the area of the brain that is to be targeted, and the other completes the circuit for the electrical flow. Looks something like this. The flow of current then goes between the 2 electrodes and flows a mild electrical stimulation through the neuronal pathways on the way. The intensity and duration of this stimulation can be varied, but it is typically between 1 to 2 milliamps for about 20 minutes. Depending on whether the charge is positive or negative, the neurons will either be hyperpolarized or depolarized. We'll focus on depolarization as this is stimulation of neuronal pathways. When a neuron is depolarized, its resting potential is lowered, which makes it easier for the neuron to fire or have an action potential. When a neuron fires, it begins the process of releasing its neurotransmitters, or sending a message that causes other neurons to release their neurotransmitters. The faster and easier it is able to do this, the faster information is able to be processed in the brain, and the stronger and quicker the effects of the neurotransmitters are to take hold. Hyperpolarization as a result of a negative charge has the opposite effect, but can be just as useful, such as targeting areas of the brain that are irrelevant to or distract from the current task at hand. Although this treatment was originally developed for disorders such as depression and Alzheimer's, it has been shown to have benefits for issues such as our low productivity if the right areas of the brain are targeted. We could start by targeting the thalamus. This is the brain's control center or relay system for sensory information that goes into the brain. If we were able to increase activity in the thalamus, individuals would be more able to take in more sensory information at a time, meaning they would be able to concentrate on one stimulus without being as distracted by all of the other sensory information that they're needing to process at the same time. This would greatly aid in reducing distraction and aiding concentration in a busy workplace. Next, the hippocampus. This is essential for the formation and storage of memories. It determines whether information is processed into short-term memory, long-term memory, or whether it is lost somewhere along the way. If we could increase hippocampal activity, more information could be directed straight into long-term memory and less of it lost somewhere in the process, reducing that in one ear and out the other effect. Finally, the hypothalamus. This is a little bit different. This controls the circadian rhythms, or the body's natural sleep-wake cycle. Therefore, we could use hyperpolarization from TDCS to reduce activity in this area of the brain, which could slow down processes such as the release of sleep-inducing GABA neurotransmitters. This could slow the onset of that midday sleepy feeling where you feel like you need to take a nap before you can get any more work done, meaning people would be able to concentrate longer, get less distracted, and pay more attention for longer periods of time without becoming fatigued. The benefits of this technology are immense. For individuals, this could mean opening us up to the idea of leisure again. If we were able to work more productively, the average work week could decrease from between 40 to 50 hours down to 25, leaving more time for leisure activities such as volunteering, working on personal projects, or simply just relaxing. On a more macroeconomic scale, of course, more productive workers are going to be beneficial. Happier workers are less likely to take time off work and more likely to contribute positively to a workplace. Increased productivity, of course, is unlikely to fix all of our economic problems. But imagine the difference that an extra, say, 30% from all New Zealanders could make for the economy if these individuals were well managed, had access to good resources, and had the time and energy to focus on innovative and creative solutions to our societal and economic problems. Neuroscience has given us the technology to make these things a reality. And despite the fact that TDCS is still experimental, the apparent lack of downsides and the obviously immense benefits of this technology, I believe, make it worth the investment of the time and money. We are constantly looking for ways to improve our functioning in everyday life. Smartphones and personal computers have almost come to act as a certain kind of second brain for a lot of people. But wouldn't it be much better to simply improve the way we use our own brains and therefore not have to rely quite so much on these kinds of technology? The greatest tool to increase human productivity can be our own human brains. And with neuroscience, we may finally come close to unlocking our own limitless. Thank you.
Hi, Sasha. Are you suggesting that our productivity is low because we are slow and stupid?
No. I am suggesting that due to a combination of cultural values and attitudes and just the nature of the way we work as New Zealanders, we tend to be more focused on getting things done to get them done, as opposed to getting them done efficiently so we can get other things done as well.
Slow and stupid.
Slow, not stupid.
Have you considered the social consequences of this kind of neuro-enhancement? I mean, pressure from employers, an elite class of clever people getting it while the stupider, slower people don't?
Absolutely considered them. First, the idea behind this is extremely cheap and easy to administer. It is not complex or expensive technology, and anyone within reason that has a good understanding of the brain can administer it. Therefore, there shouldn't be a kind of
economic barrier.
There shouldn't be a divide between the rich that can get it and the poor that can't. Second, not everyone in every industry would need this, and I'm in no way implying that every worker should be put on this.
But why wouldn't they be pressured to go on it if it was easy and cheap?
Well, there's no reason that they shouldn't, but people may obviously opt out, and in the same way that people opt out of certain enhancing things now. The other thing behind this is that being able to work more productively and therefore get more done in less amount of time can go one of two ways. And like you pointed out, this may come with pressure from employers to keep working long hours and get double the amount done.
I mean, your promise of, a great leisure time upcoming reminded me of what we were promised several decades ago by various people. I can't help but think that we would not get shorter hours. We would simply be working harder.
The future in which I envisage that this be rolled out in organisations would mean that even those working the same amount of hours and getting double the amount done would obviously, on a large scale, bring more wealth into the economy because more was getting done, and therefore, even though they were working longer hours, they would have the resources and the living standards to better enjoy even the small leisure time that they did have.
Thank you for your time.